Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Flourish FM, a podcast for the good life. Our guest today is Paul J. Zak. Paul is a professor at Claremont Graduate University, where he directs the Center for Neuroeconomics Studies. He is ranked in the top 0.3% of the world's most cited scientists, with over 200 published papers and more than 20,000 citations to his research. He's written 4 general audience books and is a regular TED speaker. His latest book, The Little Book of Happiness, A Scientific Approach to Living Better, which was published a few months ago, aims to show people how to live a longer, happier and healthier life by investing in improved relationships. And we discuss that book in detail in this episode, along with Paul's other books, including his book on trust. Nick, what did you most enjoy about our conversation with Paul?
So I feel like our show exists to try to take really rigorous, high-level research, right, and translate it into very tangible action steps. And I really can't think of a better example of that than Paul and his wealth of research and how it's sort of manifested into 6, which we talk about on the episode and we've linked in the show notes. But the way he and his team and collaborators are taking this physiological data, right, these inputs, and associating it with highly valuable experiences that we know can increase our happiness or flourishing or whatever language you want to use. And then saying, hey, here's this app that's going to help you assess when you're having them or not. Is it through impact? Is it through altruism? Is it through joy? Is it through awe? He's just really concretized it in such a brilliant way. And he obviously has a wealth of expertise across a variety of areas, but that was the highlight for me.
Awesome. Yeah, listeners and watchers, 6 is an emotional fitness app connected with Paul's most recent book that we just mentioned, The Little Book of Happiness. So this is an awesome conversation, as Nick said, with Paul J. Zak. This is How Trust Influences Flourishing with Dr. Paul J. Zak. Paul, welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks, John. Happy to be here. I'm doing great. And you?
Very well. Thank you. We're very happy to have you with us today. Thank you so much for making the time to join us on our podcast. Really excited to dig into your work. Now, you are a neuroeconomist and officially the first ever neuroeconomist we've had on our podcast. Very exciting. And your lab and your company create technologies that enable human flourishing. Before we dive into the many aspects of your work, let's get clear on what exactly you specialize in. What is neuroeconomics?
Right. I think decision-making is a really wonderful way to explore the varieties of the human experience. So, right, why you like chocolate ice cream and Nick likes vanilla. I mean, why is that? I mean, that's kind of a trivial example, but I think we look at flourishing, it is really a personal endeavor. I mean, we know on average what people should do to flourish, but by looking at decision-making and measuring brain activity while people make those decisions, we really celebrate the diversity of the human experience. I think that's really important when we discuss things like flourishing.
Literally 2 days ago, I was on a hike and we were teasing one of my best friends, my college roommate, because he ordered a vanilla scoop of ice cream. And we thought that was sort of playing with us. So it's funny that you bring that up there. But yeah, the diversity of the human experience. Great.
But even go back to that, like you're on a hike. So now you're active. It's social, right? All these things are good. You're sharing food, which is very celebratory. And teasing, which is an amazing, interesting, and human behavior. Maybe some other primates do it, but you can only tease people you care about, right? Otherwise, it's just mean.
Yeah.
So you have all these ingredients of a very strong social relationship, and that's really the work I've done is what's the underlying biological basis for that social relationship? How does it affect the decisions we make in life? That can lead to extended health span, greater happiness. I have a great word I discovered somewhere. I stole from somebody called play span. I think the goal of flourishing is to extend your play span, right? That'd be awesome.
Sorry, so again, your placemat, did you say?
Play span.
Play span.
Instead of health span.
Sorry.
Health
Play
span is
span.
like, I'm just surviving, but play span is like, I'm engaged in life. I'm really flourishing now.
Right.
Isn't that a great
Makes
term?
me think of it's a great term. Makes me think of the movie Tag. Have you seen the movie Tag?
Mm-mm.
It's based on a true story, but it's a group of grown men who still kind of played a game of tag during a month out of the year, and they'd hide and surprise each other and show up at airports and weddings, tag, you're it. And the general idea in the movie was sort of, you don't stop playing because you age because you stop playing or something along those lines, right?
Right.
I love it. Now I've got to watch it.
Yeah,
Love
it's
that.
great. It's very funny. Yeah.
Love that. The goal of flourishing is to increase your play span. Okay, that's a nice tagline for this episode. Let's dig into that. Let's just get first of all clarify. So neuroeconomics is effectively what the brain science behind decision making.
Correct.
Absolutely. Okay, great. And you've worked on this in many areas, particularly in relation to human flourishing. And
Hmm.
want to dig into as many of your books as we can today. Let's start off with the
Yeah.
most recent and then go through them. So your most recent one, published just
Yeah.
a few months ago, is called The Little Book of Happiness: A Scientific Approach to Living Better. And in that, you aim to show people how to live a longer, happier, and healthier life, perhaps to expand their play span as well, by investing in improved relationships. And some of the research behind that includes studies at the University of Oxford, which showed that at least half a person's happiness comes from having a close group of people who truly care about them. So, well, first of all, what led you to dig in deep to this research for this book?
Really, I think almost all of my professional research has been focused on how people make decisions to live longer, happier, and healthier lives. So this is really the culmination of 20 plus years of integrating these findings into something that's practical. So I think sometimes as super nerds, we're so interested in that technology, the methodology, that we fail to translate that into something useful. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, over 20 years, if I know what the heck I'm doing, I should be able to create essentially a manual that shows you how to be a more connected human. So as you said, most of our happiness is due to the quality of our social relationships. Awesome. What does quality mean? It's not actionable unless I can measure that. So as you know, we've created technology that measures the quality of those social interactions physiologically and guides people to invest in those experiences and relationships that will build up their play span, if you will. So so the book essentially is a scientific definition and application of the 45 roughly cardinal virtues. So what are virtues? Virtues means I'm putting you ahead of me. So if I want to build stronger relationships, I've got to invest in that relationship, right? And so this is a whole bunch of different ways to invest in relationships. And it's literally a playbook. You can check it off. Like, here's something I'm going to try. Like, so concrete example for me, I'm an introvert. You can't tell now because, I can't get me to shut up. But I started years ago just saying hi to people in elevators just to get used to myself, to train myself to just talk to strangers. I think it's super weird that we're in a box for 20 or 30 seconds and we pretend like there's no other humans there. So I just say hi to people. And what I found and I still do it, what I do found for many years is about half the people kind of freak out, which somehow makes me happy. And the other half, you have this nice 20-second conversation, like in a hotel or you're at a conference. Like, oh, hey, where are you coming in from? Oh, yeah, Amsterdam. Yeah, I was there a couple months ago. Great country or great city. And like that's what connected social humans do, even the weirdo introverts like me.
Love that. Love that. That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if anyone's done a study on conversations in elevators, but if that does show, if you do see a correlation with increases in happiness and other positive moods as a result of that. There was a study in Chicago where they got commuters on the subway and buses to say hi to strangers, just open up a conversation with a stranger, and they interviewed people that did that versus people that did nothing, or people that scrolled their phone or read a book. And the people that opened up a conversation with a stranger reported feeling much higher moods, positive moods, and happiness after these journeys. So it wouldn't surprise me the same for elevators as well. Do you tend to feel better after you've had conversations?
I tend to be amused.
Well, that's
All
a way
right.
of feeling better. That's a positive mood.
That's
I mean,
pleasant. That's
you guys have
pleasant,
already
right?
realized I'm a Martian, right? So I'm just trying to figure out what the humans are doing by running experiments. And so these are little naturalistic experiments. I think, if you think of investing in relationships, think of the opposite of that. Like the seven deadly sins. Why are they deadly? Because they're selfish. They're about me being more important than you. And so when you think about those close relationships we have, it's about investing so that person is, more important than yourself. And so that's what the book's about, is how do I invest in those relationships? So I think we can even do it on the micro scale, like in elevators or on buses. So some years ago, Time Magazine asked me to write like 3 sentences on New Year's resolutions, which I'm sort of against. I think, like, if you want to make a change, just make a change. Why are you waiting until January 1st? But you have 3 sentences. So what can you say? And so I started again, sort of summarizing all the work I've done. And, I'm a math guy. So I always think of like this as equations. But what I wrote was, I try to make every social experience I have a love plus experience. In other words, if I interact with you, I want to add love to the world in the very general sense and not remove love. I don't want to be a jerk. I want to try to actually make people happy every time I interact with them. And I think that's a pretty simple program.
So I'm curious, that there's a lot to chew on here because I hear that and I go back to a conversation I had with Lydia Dunworth actually before John and I even met. She wrote a book on the biology of friendship, right? And part of what she talked about there was like alignment and synchronicity and almost like unequivocal positive regard, like these sort of ambivalent relationships or these friendships.
Right.
She would sort of characterize as really like not all that healthy, right? And that's a little of what I kind of hear. Like, okay, if we want to make somebody happy every time we interact with them, but there's something to be said for kind of unpleasant experiences that bond people as well, is there not?
Mhm. Oh, yeah, great question. Thanks, Nick. Yeah,
Sure.
so when we look at the underlying neurobiology of social connection, whether short term or longer term, that is accentuated when there's moderate levels of stress involved. So again, think of,
Interesting.
soldiers in boot camp, right? Why are you marching in boot camp? You don't march into battle. You either, you're sneaking around buildings or you're in a Humvee or something. It's because you're in training your behavior and brain activity with other people. And so that under stress, that entrainment is actually very important. And what we've shown in published
Makes
research
total
is that
sense.
yeah, this when we're doing something jointly with somebody, our physiologies, our brains literally begin to synchronize. So we
Hmm.
begin to have this sort of shared cognition, which is how we build those relationships. Now, if it's under stress, that's even better. So again, moderate stress. Too high stress, people can freak out, and that's not appropriate. But under moderate stress, use like for example, just travel is a good idea. I'm going to Africa in a week on some crazy adventure. It's gonna be 30 hours in the air. Like,
Yeah.
why am I? What's wrong with me? Well, when I get there, it's going to be crazy. I'm going to be in this forest. I'm going to see the mountain gorillas. I'm going with a good friend. I mean, it's going to be wild,
Yeah.
right? But I'm going to suffer during that experience, but it's suffering that makes the experience more valuable. If I could just walk down to the zoo and hang out with gorillas for a week, and it'd be no big deal, right? But these are live, you know, wild. I mean, they're acclimated to humans, but they're wild mountain gorillas. I'm in their area. I'm in their forest. There's moderate protection. My daughter said, like, what happens if you get hurt? I'm like, the best story ever. Some big silverback broke my ribs. Like, come on, they're not going to kill me, but like I hope that happens. That'd be awesome, right? So, obviously there's something wrong with me, but that's the kind of bonding experience with people you really care about that kind of brings you together for life because you've had to kind of take care of each other. You've been under stress. Again, moderate stress, right? I mean, there are guides. It's not like we're going to get lost in the jungle.
So that's interesting because that's kind of shared stress alongside that person, right? And maybe in that case you already have pre-existing levels of trust or not, and we kind of bleed into trust from here. But
Mhm.
I guess another case study that I'd ask about is, would you argue that you build trust? Human beings often build trust, through vulnerability. That vulnerability is unpleasant. That sometimes requires these honest conversations, right? Because I love the way you conceptualize virtue early on and I heard you say it multiple times, the other person is almost more important, right? And so I'm kind of wondering the fine line between vulnerability, trust, boundaries, those sorts of dynamics which are pretty overtly unpleasant, at the time, but to your point, they serve a greater purpose. They hopefully grow the relationship and maybe that's where I'm missing is the intent is still a positive impact even if the experience is unpleasant.
Yeah, perfectly put, right? So yeah,
Okay.
we and other groups have shown in published research that if I am vulnerable to you, in this case, it's really emotional vulnerability. Here's a weakness I have that people generally positively respond to that. So the people who
Mm.
don't are people under high stress. We've done a fair amount of work with criminal psychopaths. They will take advantage of people. So obviously you have to be careful. But when am I vulnerable? Well, often it's under stress, right? Like I was just as a quick example, you talked about hiking. I was hiking with some friends and they're like, "Oh, this is the second highest mountain in San Diego County. Let's do this." And blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm in great shape." This is like 2,000 foot elevation climb, like shale, like it was like kind of using your hand, like it.
Scrambling. Yeah.
I had to stop a couple times. I'm like, I can't go on. I'm sorry, guys. I'm like, and that's kind of like I think of myself as strong, and I work out and I hike all the time, and this was just kicking my butt, and it was like you kind of strip away all the masks that we normally put on around people. And these are friends, but they're not, super close friends. But yeah, you kind of strip down to the bare essentials. Like, okay, I got to stop because I have to my legs are burning. I just can't do anymore. And then the other people occasionally want to stop as well. And, it's not like we're pointing a finger like you weakness, but, inside you're like, okay, I should have the ability to do a 2,000-foot elevation climb, but clearly I can't. And so, whatever.
Hmm.
I'm not going to fake it forever. So yeah, so I think
Sure.
that moderate stress or even high stress is a way to really connect to individuals. So, um, sorry, we're talking in generalities. Concrete example for the kids out there. If you want your first date for that cute guy or girl to go great, put them under moderate stress. So ride a roller coaster. Now, not high stress. So I taught a class in high performance
Love it.
teams, and the first year, so we would go out and do stuff. And the first year, I invited everyone to go tandem skydiving with me. Two students did
Wow.
it, and then we started doing like zip lines in the mountains in the snow. And that most people could do that. Like that was a moderate stressor for a lot of people, but the skydiving was too much. So anyway, one of the students I gave this example to took his first date on a sunset helicopter ride over Santa Monica. And like they've been together. I just ran into this kid in campus a couple of years later. He goes, "Oh yeah, I was in your class and I tried this and man, look at my super cute girlfriend." I'm like, "Wow, it really works."
Wow.
So I don't want to oversimplify, but what I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I think I'm hearing is what, and we can segue into how do we enhance relationships. What I think I'm hearing is one way is to try to create the possibility you're going to experience some discomfort together.
Hmm. Perfect.
It
Yeah.
makes total sense. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it makes total sense.
Yeah. And even think about, your romantic relationships. At some point, you do become very vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable,
Yeah.
physically vulnerable. I think I have two girl children and, think of dating as a young woman and like scary as hell. Like, so you're trying to, again, that's that trust issue. You're trying to get this unconscious, like, is this person safe? Should I be going in the car with them? So that's kind of a moderate stressor. But if you're getting the unconscious signals that, oh, this male looks like a safe person to be around and seems nice, and I'm going to get in his car and go to dinner. Like, oh, wow, that's kind of weirdly scary.
So far we got two strategies for improving relationships on the basis of this research. We got well, I'm not sure if the first one was a strategy. It's like opening up a conversation with a stranger in an elevator or some situation, which would be a moderate stressor, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's an example
But
of the
by the
general
way, I met my
strategy.
wife on an airplane by saying hi to her. So,
Wow.
it can really
Awesome.
work.
So can
Awesome.
I ask about I don't want to
Yeah.
step on you, John, but are
Yeah.
you saying like take a chance, general
Yeah.
optimism, Richard Wiseman, like, behaviors of lucky people, optimists take chances, they go
Very
to the
much
different
so.
restaurant, they say, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to step on you,
No,
John.
no, it's fine. So the general strategy, it sounds like, is one of the strategies in your book, The Little Book of Happiness, is to engage in activities that bring about a moderate amount of stress. One example of which is to strike up a conversation with a stranger.
Mhm.
What other strategies do you recommend for improving relationships?
I think for the technology we've related that will identify the underlying unconscious neural value of those experiences, it's then leaning into those experiences that are most valuable. So there's good and bad about this. I want to talk about that. So I have a limited amount of time. I have a limited amount of cognitive resources, emotional resources. How do I now begin to optimize that experience? So as you guys know, we developed a technology called Six. It's on the screen. It's free that measures physiologically the valuation system for social emotional experiences, which I've called Immersion. It's a convolution of multiple physiologic measures we could talk about later, but
Yeah.
it's the valuation network. And the reason that's important is because what's a rich social life? Well, I have limited brain resources, and when we see this high metabolic investment in the experience, could be alone, but often it's social. More often than not, it's a social experience. Go, oh, these are the things that are so valuable to me. These are the people that I want to be around. So I think you want to double down on those relationships, right? So I'm moving, I'm almost doing weird stuff. And one of my dearest friends just called me out of the blue last night, like, hey, dude, just think about you. Are you all right? I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, man, how nice that
Yeah.
this guy's a physician. He's a busy guy. He was getting off of work and called me up. And we've been through some crazy stuff together because we're both insane. And so we've been in some crazy adventures. And so we're really tightly bonded. And like just out of the blue to have someone call you and like, you're important.
Yeah.
I want to hear about you, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think I've dodged around your question, but I think, knowing which of those experiences to double down on is important. Now, here's the problem. Because the brain, as you guys know, acclimates to the stuff you do all the time. Like first time I went skydiving, kind of scared out of my mind, and now I just love it. It's super fun for me. So we acclimate pretty quickly. It also means that to really flourish, you've got to then extend those boundaries. So the people that I really like hanging around with, I'm always going to get, my kids or whatever, I'm always going to get a high value experience, hopefully. But also the stuff that used to give me a lot of value, watching the sunrise from the top of a mountain, maybe it's not going to be so valuable anymore. So I've got to now stretch and find some new experiences. Hence my crazy trip to see the gorillas in Africa.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because my sense is from some of the research, maybe this was Sonia Liebermirsky's stuff early on and some of the hedonic adaptation. Isn't that the case with marriages as well? Like my understanding is we turn generally to like baseline levels of happiness in part because there's some adaptation to the person. And so I'm wondering if we throw that in there and kind of improving relationships, do you think does there need to be sort of a, I don't want to say expansiveness, but maybe an evolution of that relationship to keep deepening it? Not necessarily better, just different and growing.
Yeah, exactly right. We want to add some kind of friction in there. Again, not so much that you're
Mm.
screaming at each other all the time, but that can be
Sure.
done by physically moving, by taking trips, by having a change in focus, by, I think the
Mm.
weekly date night thing is a
Mm.
great idea, but how about, getting away for 3 days and getting a babysitter and just going someplace on a whim? So it gets hard when you have children. But an application of that is I worked a lot with Google's wellness group, and in Google the average time a team is together is 3 weeks. 3 weeks, you hardly know anybody. But the way they want to do is they want to add chaos by adding a different person in, swapping a person out, and then having that new idea and that sense of what's going on. So this doesn't directly apply to relationships. I'm not saying add in another partner necessarily, but add in
Sure.
something that's different or new so that you add a
Yeah.
little bit of chaos, and now we have to adapt to that. That opens up that vulnerability because I think even in romantic relationships over time, we sometimes close up and we're like, I don't want to share too much about this with my spouse.
Mm.
Yeah, we had Mark Schulz on one of our early episodes, the associate director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development, the longest ever study of human life. And
Yeah.
the strategy he recommended then of reaching out to someone is one of the strategies they recommend on the basis of their research as well. Just to text someone that's close to you and say, hey, I just wanted to check in. How are you doing? Because that kind of action seems small, but it can really generate significant improvements in well-being for both parties.
And also not to be uncomfortable about that. So for whatever reason, for a lot of my social groups, I tend to be the organizer. I don't know why. And at first I was kind of like, why am I always organizing stuff? But I realized these are my dearest friends.
Yeah.
Why do I care who organizes anything, right? So, or little things like, paying for the group to do something wherever we're doing. Like we do a lot of outdoor training, so we'll go somewhere and train, and someone will just pay for the group. It's so nice, and then like it doesn't need to be fair. These are your dearest friends.
Yeah.
It probably is going to work
No
out in the end.
scoreboard.
But yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
what? So I get to buy you lunch. How awesome is that? You're a dear friend. I don't care
Yeah.
if you pay me back at all.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the investing in the relationships and not being like, oh, it has to be fair. You have to reciprocate. If you, again, don't let someone take advantage of you, obviously. But if you care about these people, who cares? Or if I have, slightly higher income than someone else and I'm picking up more of the tab or something, what do I care?
Yeah. And does this relate to the general point in your book, most recent book, that people who serve others tend to have the strongest social connections?
That's how you build those strong social connections, right? Is that service? Like this good friend who called me yesterday. So yeah, I really changed my whole thinking on it. I think when you're younger, you think we have to reciprocate. It's got to be 50-50. Someone famous said, like in romantic relationships, it shouldn't be 50-50. It should be 90-10 on both sides. I should want to put in 90% of the effort to make my wife happy. That'd be the
So
best.
that's super interesting. And I love that you went there because the research on altruism, right? I'm thinking of Stephen Post, like why good things happen to good people, like giving behavior, all those sorts of things, right? They require recipients. They require receivers. And I think to a certain extent, this is a bit of a generalization. Many of us are not great at, let alone receiving help, like actually asking for it.
Right.
right? And so I'm
Because it's
curious if
vulnerable.
that's also, yeah, I'm curious if that's sort of a strategy to enhance relationships as well, which is be willing to receive.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let me think about that for a second, Nick. I would
Okay.
say personally, before I was, say, under 40, I really had trouble receiving because
Mm,
I felt like then I have to reciprocate. I owe someone something.
yeah.
But actually, once I started, the first time I started a business, which was around 40, you're always asking for help. And the nice thing in the startup community, particularly the tech community, is there's this notion that we all got to help. We're all, most tech companies fail, right? So 90+% fail. So we're all just trying to survive and help each other. And that amazing uh, ethos, if you will, in the tech startup land, which is, I think, not generally understood. Literally every day, I'm on a Zoom with people who go, "Oh, I know a guy who could really use your software. Let me connect you to him." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh gosh, thank you." And I'm like, "What can I do to help you?" Like, "Nothing, I'm good." I'm like, "Wow." So I think if we go through life again in that Love Plus kind of program where my job is to be of service to other people. So again, practical advice. I try to end every conversation with the word service. Please let me know how I can be of service to you.
Huh.
And so I'm setting up this expectation that I want to be part of your community. I want to be I call it a service dog. So my job now is to be a service dog. You just whistle, I'll come running. And if I can help you, I will. Because I'm building up all those positive relationships. And by the way, some of those people that we help each other end up becoming friends and we end up doing crazy fun things together, right? So, not only am I getting the benefit of helping someone else, feeling good maybe about myself, but I'm also putting it out there in the community that over many years, people say, "Oh, I was talking to this guy. I haven't talked to you in 5 years, Paul, but I know this guy who really needs your software, and he works at Google or Meta or some giant company, and yeah, I'm just going to connect you to him." I'm like, "Oh man, what an awesome person!" But then I think, "Oh yeah, I did something nice for that person 5 years ago, and they remembered it." So I
Mhm.
want to be in that hopefully reciprocating and accepting role where I do need help. I need help all the time.
Love that. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, friends. Nick here with just a brief interlude to share with you an update on one of our newest partnerships with the Anti-Fragile Academy. Throughout John and I's conversations with many, if not most, of our guests, one thing has been made really clear. In order for people to flourish, thrive, experience the good life, they need to develop the capacity to not only navigate and endure, but ideally grow from the bad, grow from unpleasant experiences. That's why we're thrilled to be partnering with our newest sponsor, the Anti-Fragile Academy, an organization that I co-founded with Dr. Adam Wright, Director of Mental Performance for the Washington Nationals. At the Anti-Fragile Academy, we work with adolescent athletes, executives, and educators to help them understand some of the science, not just of optimal performance, but of well-being and anti-fragility. The ability not only to endure and bounce back from unpleasantness, but to actually come back stronger, to grow from it. Between Adam and I, we've worked with Fortune 100 companies, Inc. 300 executives, Division I programs, and elite professional athletes and Olympians from all over the world. To find out more about how you can leverage anti-fragility training, check out our website at theantifragileacademy.com.
You mentioned the 6 on your screen, and we haven't
Yeah.
yet dug into the key aspect of that. There's the free app you mentioned, which people watching this episode right now, if you scan that QR code, you can access it. But in your most recent book, you described that research shows that 6 high-value experiences a day will increase your happiness. What are these 6 experiences?
Yeah, you should have put the invective in there. What the hell is this 6 for, right? That's the question. So because we have this technology that continuously measures the brain value of the experiences you're having. We get this data from the cranial nerves. And so if you've got any old wearable, smartwatch, fitness wearable, or a ring, whatever, we can pick up that data using algorithms. It took 20 years to develop. So this is
So
not trivial.
this is the physiological you mentioned earlier, the way you're assessing. Use that phrase again, the what value?
The value of social emotional experiences. So that
But
valuation network.
physiologically.
Yeah, so that valuation
Okay.
network in the brain I've called immersion. It's
Yep.
basically a convolution of signals associated with being present, associated with frontal dopamine binding, and the emotional resonance of that experience associated by oxytocin. So oxytocin and
Mm,
we're going to go nerdy here for 5 minutes.
great.
Oxytocin and dopamine interact in fairly complex nonlinear ways that induce electrical activity. We can measure using EEG or fMRI, but we trace these pathways out to the cranial nerves. Shocking the audience. Your brain's connected to a body and they talk to each other, and they talk to each other primarily through the cranial nerves. And so we wrote code over many years that captures this convolved nonlinear signal coming out. And the magic is some of these cranial nerves pass through the heart. So if I get a time series in heart rate, I can transform that into these very subtle acceleration, deceleration factors that are driven by the immersion effect in the brain. And we know that because we did drug studies that measure the brain activity and then manipulate dopamine or oxytocin, and we check those rhythms. So anyway, lots of
Cool.
science behind it, but in
Cool.
general, it's running all the time, and it'll just pick up these high metabolic investments that go, oh, holy crap, this is really important to you. So the theory behind that is that the brain is such an energy hungry organ that it wants to idle most of the time. And when we see this big metabolic investment in this processing the social emotional experience, which I've called immersion, big spike in immersion. So spike that's high enough and long enough, and that's well defined in the published literature, then your brain goes, oh, this is really important to me. I'm going to invest a lot of resources in processing this. My dear friend who called me yesterday, like, oh, great experience. Like, what a guy. Love this guy, right? So that's an important experience to me. But then I don't know, my neighbor who I chatted with, getting to my mail, she's perfectly fine. She's not a super good friend, but she's a nice person. But it's not a high value experience, right? My brain's not going to invest all those resources. So because we have this, 1 second frequency data over months and months, and we related that to people's energy, people's mood, are you engaged in life? It just turns out that these six well-defined peak immersion moments are what we find in people who are super engaged in life. So I'm not a fan of the word wellness. I'm glad you guys use flourishing. Wellness is like, what's the opposite of wellness? You're unwell. That sounds like just a baseline. Play span, flourishing, thriving, eudaimonia. That means I'm involved in life. I'm doing stuff. I'm energetic. And so these immersion data predict people's self-reported energy with 98% accuracy, mood with 99% accuracy. So six of these experiences, you are on fire. You're just having a great time. You are really playing hard. Four of these, you're kind of maintaining mood and energy. Three or less, you have depressive symptoms. You have low energy and low mood. And so again, you guys, if you be skeptical of everything anyone says online, just go to Google Scholar. You can download these papers and read them for yourself. They're all open access. So I think it's really important for researchers and scientists to make all this information available to everybody as broadly as possible. So I
Yeah.
tend to publish almost all of our research in journals that are called open access. So there's no copyright. You
Cool.
can just download them. People can read them. So yeah. So why is it six and not five or 19? I have no idea. But six is that kind of stretch goal. I think of it as the 10,000 steps for the 21st century, right? 10,000 steps is kind of a stretch goal for physical fitness. And I think six high value moments a day is that for most people is a stretch goal for emotional fitness. And just like we can build up our physical fitness, we can also build up our emotional fitness by talking to people in elevators, by talking to people in airplanes, by having crazy adventures with your friends.
I see. So it's not that there are six specific experiences. It's rather have six of this possible array of high value experiences per day, right?
Yeah, it's going to be different for every person, and we've trained a AI assistant that,
Yeah.
after a week of data, starts giving you prospective advice. Hey, when you hang out with John, those are always great times. Hang out with John more often. Give him a call, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, we don't always consciously know this. In the extremes, we do. If I'm super happy or super sad, but how much do I enjoy talking to my friend on the phone yesterday versus my neighbor? I don't know. But my brain, because of that desire to return to baseline, if I see that big metabolic investment, I go, oh, that was important to me in the unconscious, emotional, physiologic sense.
So do they have to be six high value experiences in the sense that they're highly emotionally and socially valuable rather than, say, professionally valuable?
That's a great question. Probably like you guys, I write almost every day between scientific papers and blogs and magazine articles. I like writing. I like editing. I will get high value moments doing science
Hmm.
by myself, not
Yeah.
talking to anybody. I love it. I got the perfect job for me. But almost always for me and for most other people who've shared their data with us, those high value experiences are social. So again, I could get a lot of emotional value from writing. Let's do another example. So Nick talked about hiking with his friend who was teasing him for getting vanilla something latte.
I
Uh,
was teasing him. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
again, Nick, if you hiked up that mountain by yourself, saw this beautiful sunrise, could be a real high value moment. But doing it with your friend who you're goofing around with, who you know this guy's super, much more fun. It's going to be a more valuable experience, right? We just know that. So, yeah, great question, John. I think what I really want to know is how do I begin to optimize my limited, time and resources
Yeah.
for those experiences that help me grow? And I think the most important thing for listeners maybe is that flourishing is not a fixed pie. It's a pie you can grow. I can increase my flourishing. I can increase my play span by really stretching my ability to have those experiences to, as Nick said, to be comfortable being a little uncomfortable and
Yeah.
just kind of leaning into those things. And yeah, this varies a lot by personality type and genetics and health levels and all that. So again, don't for listeners, they shouldn't feel like, hey, I just don't have the mobility to watch the sunrise from a mountain hike. Hey, that's okay. Just find ways that help you grow as an individual and stretch you a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I see. No, it sounds like it's six high value experiences in the sense they're emotionally valuable to you. But for most people, most of the experiences will have a social element, but sometimes they're not, like writing, like
Yeah, sometimes they're
going
not.
on a bike ride on your own, whatever it might be. Yeah.
And it doesn't, these experiences are not always good. So we have a super
Oh, that's
user.
what I was going to ask. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
We have
Yeah.
a super user who, again, same thing. And like this lady is a little retired Jewish lawyer from New York, and I just love her. Her name is Deb, and she's a super user, and we just became friends. And she said, "Hey, I got in a minor car accident the other day. It was an older lady, and she backed into me, and I went to check on her, make sure she's okay." And she goes, "Then I looked at my Six app, and I got a high value moment. Like, what the heck is that about?" Well, that was important, right? You did the right. This is you're focused, you're on, and so that's why that, as Nick said earlier, that kind of moderate stress increases the likelihood of a high value moment. You got to be on. It's still good for your brain. They don't want to repeat that all the time, but it's still good. Your brain, you were helping this other person. You were focused on getting job one done, which is, are people hurt? Do we need an ambulance? Blah blah blah. And so again, that going back to that uncomfortableness to thrive, I do have to do things that may be slightly uncomfortable. Just
Right.
like again, going to the gym, right? So, it's hard to work out. I mean, it's physiologically stressful, but I'm doing that because I'm building up my musculature and my cardiovascular fitness. I've got to stretch myself to get better or maintain. If I just said, "Oh, I'm going to sit on the couch and wrap myself in bubble wrap and never have stress in my life," well, that's not thriving. That's not flourishing.
I'm so glad you went there because my question was, does the high value moment depend on the affect? And what I think I'm hearing is no, it could be pleasant, it could be unpleasant. And sometimes I'm thinking of another Paul Bloom, like chosen suffering. Sometimes the most meaningful things are unpleasant during, right? And what I hear from the story of Deb is character alignment, coherence, eudaimonia, right? In some
Right.
ways. But in the moment, it could have been, oh, this is going to mess up my meeting or make me late, or I'm scared about dealing with XYZ, but she stuck to it anyway. And it sounds like probably reaped, well, she did, according to have that immersive moment. Is that the right phrasing?
Yeah, yeah. Peak
Yeah.
immersion moment. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we know all the same people. So Paul Bloom spoke right before me at the TED conference in
Oh,
2011
cool.
on happiness. Like this, he had a book, I think is, mid 2000s on happiness. And you got to follow, this guy talking about happiness but now was talking about love and social connection and all that. So it wasn't totally out of whack, but yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah. Really, really, really interesting overlaps there. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should also, Paul, discuss your work on trust today. We'd love to discuss your
Yeah.
work on trust today. So let's segue into that now, because that's another key area of your work, the neuroscience of trust. And you published a book in 2017, Trust Factor, the science of creating high performance companies. And in that, you apply neuroscientific research to building efficient high performance organizations by creating a culture of trust. So, what have you found through your research about the neuroscience of trust and the relationship between trust and flourishing?
Wow. Yeah. So how much time do we have? Yeah. So in the
Gladly not
early,
that long, but please dive in as much as you can.
yeah. So the short backstory is in the early 2000s, I was at a conference and they had talked about trust conference on why countries are rich or poor. And this guy talked about trust. And I said, and trust affects things like investments, capital investments. And I said, well, but trust has got to be endogenous to the investment decision. Like, you're not going to make an investment if you don't trust that you can get a return, and you assume this is like an independent variable. So I was kind of, I mean, academics. So we're sort of trying to help, but also taking shots at people in a nice way. And
Yeah.
I said, you need a theory of trust. Like, he goes, well, there's no theory of trust. I'm like, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh, getting on airplanes, eating in restaurants, walking down the streets, all about trust.
Hmm.
And so there was no ology I could find, psychology associated. I really had a good theory of trust. And so,
Hmm.
given my background, I went and read the animal literature. And so my group was the first to link this neurochemical oxytocin to trust. So we showed that when someone trusts you in a quantifiable, meaningful way, intentionally, that your brain almost always releases oxytocin. The more oxytocin you release, the more you reciprocate. Right. And so we showed that by creating a protocol to measure oxytocin release from the brain in the peripheral blood supply. So oxytocin is released in the brain where it affects behavior, but also it's released in the to the blood has peripheral organs that it goes to. So we really started creating a way to measure the brain's release of oxytocin. So it's primarily made in the brain, and then did the first study in which we infused synthetic oxytocin intranasally and showed that we could substantially increase trust in strangers, again, in a meaningful way. In this case, sharing money with a stranger. So yeah, so we did a lot of work on that and really looked at a whole variety of um, social behaviors, generally pro-social behaviors that induce the release of oxytocin, connected us to other people. You see the theme now, right? So now all of a sudden, I'm treating what oxytocin does essentially is to treat a stranger like family, right? Oxytocin is classically associated with care for offspring and bonding in some species, pair bonding to raise offspring. And so now when I release oxytocin as a human with a guy I just met, Nick, I'm like, oh yeah, Nick's like a brother. Like, oh, just share stuff with him. He seems safe. And so I think that was really fundamental work, and published a book in 2012 called The Moral Molecule about how this sustains, without government oversight, just sustains good behavior in many senses. And then I got challenged. Sorry, Nick, do you want to jump in?
No, I do want to ask about that. You
Yeah.
keep kind of leading me exactly where I want to go. So I used to teach some courses where we'd bring up oxytocin, but we'd also talk about common enemy intimacy. And you said
Mhm.
you generally studied pro-social behaviors, but I'm wondering if you ever got into that. This is a bit tangential to our conversation, but
Yeah.
do you, it maybe you're not sure, but I'm curious if you see similar sort of bonds, moments of immersion, if you will, right, or increased trust even when, as I understand it, the oxytocin or the bonding is kind of around shared hatred or fear or, isms, if you will, right?
Yeah. I mean, oxytocin increases empathy. So now I'm psychologically, I'm connected to the other person. And if I prime you to behave badly or we're under attack at some level, yeah, that's an oxytocin response. So I think of, immediately after 9/11, I remember there was a New York baseball team playing a Chicago baseball team, and the people in Chicago were holding up signs like "We love New York." Wouldn't have happened if we weren't literally under attack, right?
Right.
So again, we're back to that kind of moderate level of stress or even high stress as this bonding opportunity. Yeah, so you can have, gangs, affiliate strongly with each other and do evil together, and that's still apparently largely driven by oxytocin. But in
Hmm.
general, absent that prime to behave badly, oxytocin is almost always associated with positive social behaviors. In fact, let me go
Pro-social.
further.
Cool. Okay.
We did a
Okay.
study that involved 800 blood draws, very, very large study to measure changes in oxytocin, in which we
Yeah.
had people bond with their own group, either a pre-bonded group, like for example, we took ROTC cadets and had them do a ecologically valid task. In that case, it was march around my lab for 15 minutes. So blood draw before and after. That bonds them together, releases oxytocin. We did all kinds of groups, religious groups, random groups we formed. We had them do some kind of task that was relevant to them. If they released oxytocin with their own group and then had a chance to like share money with another group, an out group, Once you release oxytocin, it's a very blunt effect. They were super equally nice to the out group as to the in group. So we all have this kind
Mm,
of in group bias because we're going to interact more with our in group in the future. But that in group bias goes away once I've released oxytocin, at least for about 20 or 30 minutes. After that, the effect dissipates. And so it's a really
that's cool.
powerful effect about
That's cool.
connecting us. And the 2017 book John talked about was I was challenged by business leaders like, hey, we think trust is important in our organization. How do we measure and raise trust among employees? And because I'm not very smart. At first, I was like, with this blood protocol, I can measure blood in your employees, and these CEOs would turn white and like, oh no, we can't do that. And I thought, okay, if I'm a trust expert, how do I not know how to advise companies how to do this? And so we created a survey that looks at a bunch of behaviors that are the foundation for trust, and then use all that data, and also measure brand activity, and took blood at a number of companies like Zappos was early on online shoe and clothing seller.
Hmm.
Tony Hsieh, with the founder, was kind of became a friend, and yeah, so we did some crazy studies at Zappos, at Herman Miller, the furniture maker. So we
Yep.
actually did do the neuroscience as well as collect the survey data to make sure that they did correlate with each other. And so, again, a lot of this behavior, there's sort of 8 foundations for organizational trust. We don't have to go through them, but they are that other regarding behavior, right? So, again, just for listeners, trust is not a feeling, it's a set of behaviors, right? I objectively trust you if I give you my AirPod case and say, hey, take it, it's a gift or whatever. That's objectively trust, right? If you just ask me, do you trust this other person? That's a very weak measure, and I'm not into, I think intentions are nice, but actions speak louder than words.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Very timely and relevant for me,
Yeah.
actually. I'm enjoying this. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust's role in flourishing. You've said that you think play span is the key to flourishing. How do you see trust playing into play span, if you'll excuse the pun?
Perfect. Yes. Lovely phrase. Do I want to be around someone who does not appear to be trustworthy? No, they're not. They're not safe. They're not, right. I'm not going to be able to have that kind of deep bonding experience with them. So, yeah, I think trust is a kind of sort of table stakes, right? And uh, the areas where oxytocin is primarily active are in evolutionarily old parts of the brain outside of conscious awareness. But we do have that sense of that kind of hairs on the neck stand up. Sometimes you go, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something odd about that
Intuition.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, again, for listeners, listen to your intuition. If it feels wrong, by the way, we have this phrase gut instinct. They're literally oxytocin receptors on the nerves that innervate the gut. And so, yeah, if you get a weird gut instinct, listen to it. Like, you can always change your mind later, right? But if you're in a dark alley and, whatever, or cocktail party, sometimes you just get that sense. Now, it
Yeah.
could be also a positive sense. Like, just as a concrete example, this physician who called me, is a dear friend of mine last night. We met, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago at a medical event and just hit it off. And turns out we lived 3 miles from each other and like all the same things. And we became really close friends really fast, and have been friends and for a long time. So you can get that positive sense as well as that negative sense.
Wow. Beautifully succinct. Thank you so much, Paul. So there are a million things we'd love to keep asking you here. We
Yeah.
should probably move towards, though, our final kind of signature question, which we call our flourishing question. The one lesson on flourishing that you'd love our listeners to walk away with in a practical step, putting it into action. What would it be, Paul?
Say, find every day one thing that strengthens your relationship with somebody around you. And that means investing in that relationship. What can I do that is nice to that person? It could just be a text message. It could be picking up something that's surprising. By the way, the brain loves the unexpected. So showing up with a little gift, a little something, or that random phone call, sometimes that's all it takes. So one random factor, activity, behavior that will make that other person understand how much you care about them. You want a second one?
Yeah, go for it.
Don't,
Yeah, sure.
don't
Go
be
for it.
afraid to use the L word. So I was in my hometown. My father passed away recently. I had to sell his condo, and I was seeing old friends. Once your parents are gone, you don't really need to go to your hometown anymore. So it's kind of a goodbye. And I had 3 male friends tell me they loved me. I'm like, man, I am so blessed to have these amazing human beings. And it wasn't like I said, I'm never going to see you again. It's just that, it was a very poignant time for me to kind of say goodbye to my hometown and have no reason to go back. And just spontaneously, I mean, not together, just, I'm having coffee with friends. So you can tell people you love them. Again, it's not a weird thing, particularly when you have gray hair or no hair like Nick. It doesn't bother you when you get old enough, like just tell your friends you love them.
I shave my head, by the way. There's a full
Oh,
mop
you
on
have
there.
plenty of hair. Look at this alpha male.
Paul, this has been great. Please, drop your website, social names, app. Where can people interact with you, learn more about your various expertise and all these different topics?
Thank you. Yeah, so the app is free. You can find out more information at your6.com, the number 6. If you're listening to this, you must be an awesome human. You can email me there. From there, you can find my academic websites and all kinds of links to me. So if you have questions, I'm happy to reply to them because apparently I'm a service dog.
Yeah, you certainly are. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul Zak. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing on flourishing, on happiness, on neuroeconomics, and so much more. And we'll share links to all the things you've mentioned and much more in our show notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been How Trust Influences Flourishing with Dr. Paul Zak. Thank you for watching or listening.
Thanks so much for listening to Flourish FM. We hope you enjoyed the content. Please be sure to leave us a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast and on all major social media platforms.
And if you visit our website, flourishfmpodcast.com, you can sign up to our newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter. First newsletter of every month, we share a long-form blog. And every newsletter, every week, we share highlights from our previous episodes. Please hit subscribe on our website.